Has effectively been kicked off the UN Human Rights Council, and it failed to garner enough votes in elections to the body at the General Assembly earlier. RT's Caleb Maupin has more.
It was a very close vote, but it appears at this time that for the first time since 2006, Russia will not be on the United Nations Human Rights Council. The seats on the council reserved for Eastern Europe will go to Hungary and Croatia. It was a very close vote, but it was a response mainly to a global media campaign. Much of the international media, much of the Western press has been urging that Russia be removed from the UN Human Rights Council based on allegations of war crimes being committed in Aleppo. Now, it's being pointed out by Russia that no real proof is being given for these allegations, and that Russia is actually fighting terrorism, fighting against the al-Nusra terrorists in Aleppo. Now, interestingly, though Russia has been removed from the UN Human Rights Council, one country that was re-elected was the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That's right, you did not misunderstand me. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will be on the UN Human Rights Council, setting human rights policy for the world. Now, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is widely criticized for its violations of human rights. Currently, Saudi Arabia is engaged in a bombing campaign in Yemen, and it is widely understood that their bombing campaign against Yemen is targeting civilians. Let's take a look. Now, the recently released 28 pages from the 9/11 Commission report show that the Saudi government and Saudi intelligence was likely involved in the 9/11 attacks, the biggest terror attack in U.S. history. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia has been accused of widely violating the rights of its own people. There's much to substantiate allegations about the violations of human rights on a domestic level by the Saudi government. However, as the new UN Human Rights Council has been established, Saudi Arabia will be on it, but Russia will not.
Well, let's take a closer look at Saudi Arabia's domestic human rights record. Beheadings were common practice in the country, with more than 150 carried out in 2015 alone. Over the past 3 decades, there have been thousands. Freedom of speech in Saudi Arabia is also not permitted. Critics of the government are executed, and at times even by crucifixion. Other punishments include 1,000 lashes. Dawood Harala, a professor of international law at Georgetown University, believes that the countries which vote for Saudi Arabia undermine the credibility of the council.
It is absolutely, it defies any logic that a country like Saudi Arabia, with a consistent record of violating international law, any kind of civil law inside the kingdom and beyond, promoter of terrorism. It is so shocking also to see that the US promoting a campaign against Russia and trying to mobilize the whole country and voting for Saudi Arabia is a country that has just issued a law by both houses of Congress unanimously considering Saudi Arabia as responsible for terrorist activities. So many of the U.S. officials and the rest of the world saying that that Saudi Arabia has been a promoter behind terrorism in the world and trying to punish a country that is almost single-handedly, with some allies, trying to fight terrorism in Syria and calling on the whole world to fight terrorism. It should be punished for that. Those countries who are voting, who are casting such votes, do they realize what they are doing to the moral authority of this organ that is called UN Human Rights Council? Do they know what they are doing to the United Nations credibility and moral authority? It is really shocking and shameful for those who have voted for it.
So as we mentioned, unlike Saudi Arabia, Russia has been removed from the Rights Council amid intense pressure from humanitarian groups over Moscow's actions in Syria. Earlier, my colleague Rory Souchet spoke with the regional director of one of those groups, the Syrian Relief Network.
Me personally and all the other 86 organizations who signed it, we firmly believe that Russia does not belong to the Human Rights Council. Otherwise, it should be on the other side of the table where they are questioned about their actions, especially in Syria.
As you well know, working there in Syria, Russia has proposed numerous times to work with America, to have America help Russia to escort the civilians out of Aleppo. However, every time Russia makes that proposal, America says no.
I can assure you that Russia is among other parties that impeded the latest medical evac effort we tried to do in Aleppo and refused completely to channel any aid.
Can you give us some
into the
information
city.
how this happened? Because we believe the Ministry of Defense has been trying to be transparent in this. Maybe you could give us some evidence of your concerns here.
We always demanded to channel aid into any besieged city in addition to evacuation of the injured. However, from the Russian side, the offer was only to get those injured outside the city without any aid going in.
What about the militants? Because we understand the militants, extremists, mercenaries, terrorists, they're using civilians as human shields. We understand they've also been preventing them from leaving as well. Where do you apportion the blame, Dr. Derry?
We condemn any act that prevent human aid from getting to the population or medical evacs. However, during the negotiations, we always find that the superpowers, namely Russia, is the one that keep impeding. They are trying to impose very harsh rules and conditions to get any aid in or patients out. From the other side, eventually we can get some sort of cooperation. But I would say it again, the most problematic thing is the continuous bombardment.
To take your own words, the continuous bombardment. We have reports every day of militant shells being shot from eastern Aleppo into the safely government-controlled western Aleppo. You're telling me you condemn all acts of violence, but you're not condemning the militants who are killing civilians.
We're not denying that fact, and we condemn it day and night. Targeting civilians from all parties is a crime against humanity. We cannot tolerate it. So we're not siding with one side over another.
You're one of the NGOs calling for Russia to essentially be booted off the UNHRC, and yet you don't have any problem with Saudi Arabia, which ultimately has one of the most dismal human rights records on our planet.
I have enough evidence to object on Russia's nomination. However, I'm quite happy to address the matter of Saudi Arabia if you can provide me with the same evidence I have here regarding targeting civilians or committing crimes or anything against human rights.